Thank you so much for attending and for your interest in this subject. Today's session is how to combat disengagement using social annotation to reignite student attention. And I have a couple of housekeeping tips as we move through this session. The first is to please use the Q&A section in the bottom navigation bar of Zoom if you have questions or comments, anything that you'd like us to address, whether it's technical or something related to Professor Gopal's presentation. And I will be monitoring that for Professor Gopal, and we also have another member of our team helping with technical issues on the back end. Um, so I will try to keep an eye on that for you. Um, we also have closed captioning. So to see closed captioning, enable it via the CC icon in the Zoom menu, and that's located at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So again, if you have questions about that, do drop those questions into Q&A. So we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you again for being here. My name is Jessica George, and I am the Customer Experience Manager at Hypothesis. I support schools mostly west of the Mississippi, so you may have seen me before. Thank you so much for being here. I am getting over a cold, so I apologize for my voice. I'll probably be off camera drinking tea during Professor Gopal's presentation, but I am here um, and we will be doing a conversation after her session. And I am so happy to be joined by Professor Nita Gopal, Professor of English at Modesto Junior College. Um, she has some great ideas and a really thoughtful presentation to share with us. So we're really lucky to have her today. Thank you, Professor Gopal. So I am actually going to hand over my slides. So I'll stop sharing and Professor Gopal, you can pull up your slides whenever you're ready. Mhm. Oops, and I forgot to mention, we always love to have our audience share in Q&A where they're coming from or where they're zooming in from. So we'd love to see your introductions in Q&A and any specific questions you have for Professor Gopal, feel free to drop those in as she moves through her presentation. So Professor Gopal, I will go ahead and hand it over to you.
Okay, fantastic. Hello, everybody. Namaste to you all. I hope your day has started off well and is going well. Well, for some of you, it may be already well into the afternoon. Um, yes, now, Jessica, are you able to see the presentation? Is everybody able to see the presentation?
Yes, it looks great.
It looks good. Okay,
Yeah,
fantastic.
and just for your reference, we can see your menu bar at the bottom. Um, that's fine. I just wanted to let you know.
Okay. Yeah, I did not know if there was a way to hide it. I guess it's always there, huh?
Um, it might have to do with the presenter mode. I think as long
Okay.
as you don't have notifications popping up, it'll be fine.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. So here we go. Let's get started. Lessening distractions and increasing attention with social annotations. I hope what I have to say is of some use to you. Um, okay, let's see. Let's go to the next slide. Okay. So the idea is um, to see if we can, in some way, leverage the kind of the dilution of attention that is continuously happening. There is sort of like an erosion of it that is continuously happening, and which we all have observed as educators of students. We have probably observed it of ourselves too. And so when I was thinking about this, I was thinking, you know, we see people very much engaged in social media. We are seeing that means they want to communicate. There's just all kinds of engagement over there happening with each other, but they also try to people appear to be very conscious about the kind of self-image that they are creating. So there's kind of almost as though there's an illusion that is created, and then folks invite others to engage with that illusion. And this multiplies a millionfold as that strange kind of engagement goes on. And and with that, the focus, obviously, which was supposed to have been on one single object, one single area, kind of, moves away. It just gets dispersed. So, in that sense, in that context, when folks are trying to create a kind of persona, for certain type of social identity, if there was a way in which we could sort of that same zest, if there was there a way to kind of turn it back into toward their own intellect, toward their own power of awareness. The power of awareness exists. So so the question that came to my mind is there a way that we can take that and turn it back inwards? That's kind of what I was asking myself in the process of thinking through the issues that were coming up in the classroom, whether it was online or hybrid or completely face-to-face, etc., or completely online, synchronous, asynchronous, and all of those modalities. So I began to think, what if I started designing my prompts slightly differently, wording them slightly differently? For example, what if I specified what we were exactly seeking? Like, let's say, and I must say that I'm talking completely in the context of social annotation. And when it comes to social annotation, hypothesis has been my experience. And so I'm talking in context of social annotation within the hypothesis software is what I'm, because that's kind of my experience, and that's what I have been using, and so that's pretty much what I'm that's the area within which I'm speaking. Okay, so then I thought, okay, is it possible? Let's see if to tell my students, okay, so here is the hypothesis assignment. All right, you're supposed to annotate. Good. I have taught you what annotation is. Fantastic. Now, is there a way in which um, that we all figure out what exactly are we seeking through this assignment? There is that I also kind of felt, and this is what I explained to my students, and I did this yesterday too, that no matter what you say, in hypothesis, you might be replying to somebody, you're replying to a text, no matter what you're saying, you're actually, if you really look deeply within yourself, you're actually looking for a deeper understanding of your own self. And how do we do that? And we look for a deeper understanding of ourselves. Um, uh, though there are, there's our persona, there are our tendencies, there are all our inclinations, etc. It is so complicated that we want to kind of find a pathway through our own psyche. This is kind of like the underbelly of the voice projection that we do, or the comments that we put in hypothesis. Um, um, so I thought this is what we are seeking. We really want a deeper understanding of ourselves. We really want empathy and respect for various perspectives. This is what we should have on this hypothesis board. We must empathize with what someone else is saying, at least try very much. We must have respect for various perspectives. Um, and we must be very aware, absolutely crystal clear aware of what we are thinking and saying and its effects. Can we make this our sort of like not an agenda, but our philosophy before we get into the hypothesis board? Is kind of what I started off with. So with that in mind, one could probably say Let us place emphasis on creating anecdotes and storytelling. And mine is I'm an English professor, so I am mine is right now it's all composition classes, English 103, which is critical thinking and composition. So and I usually tell my students that when you do a personal anecdote, a little story, there's just immediately somebody's attention is caught in that. They're able to connect with that because after all, there are so many common experiences that we have. There's a commonality of all experiences behind all experiences in a way. So, if you can do well-constructed narratives, that can engage everybody. In otherwise, hypothesis is going to also this tool that we have that we're going to use for our learning. We don't want it to become, oh, this is just a regular discussion board, and a teacher wants us to put two comments, and then we'll do that, and then we'll go away. I got my 10 points, so I'm good. We don't want it to be so um, uninvolved or something so matter of fact, so mundane. We want it to be you. And there's a lot to you than what you are projecting and what you are seeing. There is much more to the interiority of us, our thoughts, our notions, our feelings, our tendencies, our expectations, our fears, our all kinds of things. There's just so much there to actually bring out and connect with others very easily. So this is kind of what I began to talk about. Um, all right, so let's go to the next slide. So the whole idea here, once again, like in the previous slide, the title is leveraging the tendency for self-image, moving attention from self-image, the exterior image, to the intellect, to the interiority of us, which is sort of like an ocean, right? There's this surface, and then there is the several miles below. There is much inside that ocean of intellect. So I began to emphasize dialogue. Let me just move this up. Annotation assignments can be combined with reflective discussions on the LMS. This I do a lot. So once I have them do their hypothesis assignment, I will post a question, a reflection question about it on the regular discussion board. What I use is Canvas, and you may be using some other LMS. Either way, it could still be done if you would like to do it. One example is I might say, which annotation dialogue among your peers did you find most engaging and enlightening? There was all this conversation happening. What was it that was interesting to you? Place the dialogue on this discussion board. So I open up the discussion, so 10 points or whatever it is. Put that dialogue here, right? And then write one paragraph commentary on what was said. What was said over there and how it was said. How was it important to you? What did you take away from it? Explain why you chose this dialogue. You saw quite a few, but you chose this dialogue to put it to highlight on this discussion board. And if you put it because you liked it so much, would you vote for it as a model discourse? Because then we can use that model discourse and display it as an example for a wonderful hypothesis annotation discourse. So that's the other thing that I did. Okay. So now comes my favorite here. Many of us have read, many of us, in our schools of education, Campfires in Cyberspace, David Thornburg's very famous book and essay. So I was wondering, okay, so I thought, okay, this congregating around hypothesis that I make them do every time, almost every week, sometimes twice a week. This is sort of like gathering around that water hole that David Thornburg speaks about. One of the things he says, one of the things, I just put one little quote in there, is that each participant at the watering hole is both a learner and a teacher at the same time. So there's that informality aspect, no pressure, right? It's informal. We have read something, um, and then we have sort of like put our thoughts, raw thoughts about it, and we are just kind of like now talking about it very informally. So I really, that whole watering hole idea became very sort of real in this hypothesis annotation space for me. And I was very intrigued. I came across this article by Laura Papano. The article is on college campuses, social media provides private spaces for thousands. This was shocking actually to me because she says for Gen Z, life does not happen if it is not recorded on social media. That is where students go to complain, empathize, poke fun, debate, procrastinate, give and seek support, or get a laugh and belong. Oh, belong. Okay. And I never thought of social media as a place for belonging. I never thought of that earlier to this particular quote. This is when this got me thinking. Um, and also it was very interesting to me that for Gen Z, that if it was not happening over here, it wasn't life at all. That was that was just amazing. I said, really? That means my perception of what life is so different from their perception of what life is. Um, that again got me thinking. So, okay, so now can we do something about this? Because what life is really more, much more than this little any little social media space where we complain or empathize or poke on whatever it is. Life is so much bigger than that. Learning, intellect, intelligence is so much bigger than all of this. So I was wondering, is it possible for us to take this, use this in some way? And so I came up with this. So we could leverage this inclination for watering holes by creating a similar space for formative learning with social annotation exercises. The prompt could first get students to understand what we are seeking. Are we seeking to generate ideas? So we have a goal here. Are we going to, on this hypothesis annotation board, are we generating ideas? Are we seeking to just get to know each other's ideas better? We're just kind of getting a feel for how we are all thinking. Are we seeking to prepare for a future collaboration on a project? Prompts for the exercise will depend on this goal, I thought. So setting up that goal, setting up that, look, we're all seekers in a way. Some of us are spiritual seekers, some of us are material seekers, some of us are something as intellectual seekers, all good. And but can we use that? Can we use that our need to seek, to turn that into a learning environment, to turn that into a space of learning that is powerful? Okay, so once again, I'm still on the watering holes idea by David Thornburg. So some examples that we could use, and you probably have already used this, in your experience, whether it's in the classroom or LMS, etc. But we could also do this in annotation also. We could say, hey, every post must have a question, every reply must have a direct answer and a question. So, let's say student John posts something, like he has got his thoughts, and then he asks a question. And then student Adam will reply to John and ask him a question again. And then student John replies, and that completes that discourse. Tiny little discourse happening in that area. Student-initiated group community-based projects on the annotated text are also possible. We can say, look, the purpose of this annotation is that a project idea emerges from it. So let's see if you, with that idea in mind, let us see if your discussion will create a project idea. So you're engaging in this discussion to create something, to come up with something, to bring in a new thought, maybe. So students could also, choose words from their group's dialogue and create a verb map. These are just ideas we give students, and that could be used for discussing project ideas. So idea generation becomes a goal, becomes the emphasis in this particular type of hypothesis annotation assignment. And if the text to be annotated deals with real world problem, then all the better, right? For brainstorming solutions to apply to a bigger project. So it can be like a little stepping stone for other things they could create in the classroom. Okay, so annotation exercises need not be an end in themselves. Like our discussion boards, they're not an end in themselves. They could be a stepping stone for higher, deeper knowledge, that bigger creation that's happening, where, and the annotation, discussions, etc., are creating that pathway for that bigger thing to open up. Okay, there's this. So we're trying to leverage all these tendencies that have come up with continuous, usage of social media, internet, and so on. Okay, so so very often we observe this, right? We observe this. I observe this of myself. I observe this of students in the classroom or anywhere else. We observe this of society. You'll observe this probably even in the airport, wherever you are. People are unable to look away. It's just absorption in that zone of social media. So whether it is information or entertainment or habit or social validation or accessibility or peer influence or FOMO or addiction, etc., the idea with social information exercises is to turn weakness into something that is stronger, that is the weakness into a positive experience, perhaps. That's kind of the idea. Okay, so now can we do this or can we try to do this? Was the question that continuously came up to me. So let's see. Students, let's see if we can do this at heart. Let's see. Students choose current events to annotate. So we give them, so this I did in my hybrid classroom, in the classroom. So here, so okay, let us choose some current events and then we will pick that one current event as a class and we will annotate that. And when I did this, I think I can't remember if this was last semester or I tried it the previous. This semester, I haven't yet embarked on this particular little activity in the classroom. So one group came up with the topic of the Baltimore Bridge accident that had just occurred. They pulled that up. And then that was the most popular um, what do you call article that they pulled up that day. And so that's what people did their annotations on. And that led to other things, and that led to other things, and so on. So it sort of worked. So in a way, they did use their phones. Maybe they did use the lap. I give them, yeah, not give them, but our school gives them laptops to work on if they don't have their own. So all of that was used for this particular activity, learning activity. Collective annotation in real time in the classroom. I did this very recently, actually. Today's Thursday. I did this yesterday with my Wednesday students. And one of the, so I asked them, so, hey, you all do social hypothesis annotations. You all do these activities, for homework. Now you did this in class. So how do you feel the difference? Do you feel a difference? And they were all nodding. So I said, speak up, tell me. So what is the difference? And one student from the back, she says, the live annotation, it opens up my mind. Opens up my mind. I said, wow, I couldn't put it better. I really couldn't put it better. This is fabulous. So, so I felt like, okay, so there is something happening with these little activities that we are doing. Annotation to research, back to annotations is another thing. So what happens with this particular activity? Students annotate a given text. They're first given a text, you annotate it, and then do some research, on any of the things that have come up on the annotation. So there's that text already available to you. So you do that, do some research on it, come back, share what you found, and then each group will decide on one researched essay out of all the researched essays that you have brought. Pick one that you will annotate and you will present that. So once again, that the power to choose the text sort of helped with the attention and focus. Okay, let's move this here. Let's move all of this to the blank spaces. Okay. Yeah, so leveraging the tendency to not being able to look away. So one topic, many perspectives, summarizing and paraphrasing exercise of the various opinions. So they look at all the opinions on the hypothesis board and I'll say, okay, Let us see if you can summarize all that, paraphrase all that, and put it on this particular assignment. They could also reflect on what they have summarized and paraphrased and comment. Let's get a commentary going on those various perspectives and add an original opinion. From this, maybe an essay will emerge. It'll all be based maybe on social annotation, but it's all you. You're trying to bring something new, standing on the shoulders of many. So, and that way we also get to respect all the perspectives out there. Checking information credibility, students could annotate social media posts to identify misinformation. They could also do summative assignment where they're critically evaluating that the social media posts, they're critically evaluating and trying to prove whether was it misinformation, was it the real thing, and so on. So that's another idea. Okay, so, and then of course, annotating videos and images it's very, very, I think it's very enticing to them to give them a change and say, let's watch this video and let's start annotating. Let's look at this image. There's a lot going on here. Tell me what you think. So that's another thing. Annotating model papers, that is helpful. Annotating chapters. I love this because my classes are completely ZTC. So I use a lot of online education resources in my classes. And so it's very easy, like if I can open up a Libre text page and then put that in as an assignment and the hypothesis, this is all in Canvas. So, and then they actually annotate those chapters. That's also very helpful. Okay. So a wonderful consequence I realized of all of this was regular and substantive interaction. We all hear this a lot, right? Online education, RSI, be careful. So you must have this and so on. So in online classes, meaningful and consistent engagement between students and the instructor is a requirement. So when evaluators come in, they come into the classes, they need to see this, they need to see evidences of this. So this can be easily achieved through hypothesis annotation assignment. So they can do their thing in hypothesis and then bring it into the LMS and be able to showcase all of that. It can be a very wonderful way of continuously engaging between themselves and between the teacher. So when reflections on the annotation assignment are posted on a discussion board, the active participation of students in the learning process becomes evident. It becomes real. Okay. So a deeper connection also happens when students socially annotated text. A minimum of 2 types of connections occur simultaneously. And this is what I promise my students when they come into the class, that there'll be 3 ways in which you will learn. And all of that happens over here. Student to student connection happens. Student to text connection happens. And if the teacher puts herself in the mix, then the 3rd dimension also comes into play. Student to teacher connection happens. So when they are doing this live in the classroom, I put myself in it. So, and I'll say, well, I have a question for you guys. Look at this question and answer it very quickly. So while they're, so the idea is we keep their attention there, focused on the book, on the thinking, on the thoughts, rather than let it drift away, which very easily happens. Okay. Okay, so I had an afterthought, so I just have a couple more things to say. I hope you're good on time. I'll need 2-3 more minutes maybe. So reading, listening, deliberation, discourse, meditation. So I always bring in a little bit about ancient India, even in my classes, like this is how they used to do things. Isn't that cool? And we lost all of it, in modernization. And so in ancient India, the learning of the scriptures involved 3 stages. Reading and listening, this was called Shravana in Sanskrit. Reading and listening, you're reading and listening. That doesn't mean everything will become clear to you, because when you're reading and listening, you'll have so many questions and doubts that will come up. Okay, fantastic. Then we go to the next stage, which is reflection, deliberation, discourse, manana, continuous discussion and deliberation. And they learn from that. A few more doubts become clear. Some doubts will go away. And then comes the third stage, which is meditation on the learnings leading to realization. So when the realization happens, when those epiphanies come, then the clarity is there, right? So these are the three ways in which very difficult texts used to be tackled. And so I kind of try to use that methodology in my classes too. It doesn't matter how difficult a text is, you can absolutely, come to a clarity about what it is saying. And here are the methods that we could use. Social annotation is the discourse and reflection part where students work through their doubts before experiencing the direct knowledge that comes when they're writing their essay, that comes when they're doing their tests, etc. So it's a stage in learning. The deeper understanding and personal connection that comes from annotating can later manifest in an essay form or a text or a term paper form, maybe in the form of even a script for a movie maybe or a poem maybe or something else, but it can lead to a lot of wonderful creativity. Okay, so in general, focusing on understanding oneself through annotations is the idea. Awareness of what we are seeking, be aware. Emphasis on creating anecdotes and storytelling, combining annotation exercises with reflective assignments, the watering hole environment, very informal, formative exercises, annotation exercises as stepping stones to higher knowledge and creativity. So, entangled in social media? Let's not worry about that. Let's use it for our betterment or the betterment of student learning. That's it. Questions? I can stop share and now I can probably go into
Thank
Q&A.
you. Thank you so much, Professor Gopal. That was really inspiring, and I have a lot of notes.
Wonderful.
Before we begin Q&A, I did want to show folks what annotation looks like in your LMS, just to give some more context. And I meant to do this before your session. Apologies, I completely forgot. So let me go ahead and pull that up here. All right, so let's take a look. All right. Hopefully, you can see my screen. So this is an annotation sample assignment that I've launched from our Canvas demo. And I'm using a literature example because Professor Gopal teaches literature um, and composition classes. So this is an example of a poem that's hosted on another website that we've pulled into the tool. And what you see is the poem itself as it appears on the website, and then the annotation sidebar that layers over the poem. And this is what it will look like no matter what your LMS is. So this has been launched from Canvas, but this looks the same in D2L Brightspace, Blackboard, and so on. And you'll see that part of the magic of social annotation is that it reorients students' attention, as Professor Gopal might say, back to the text. And students are sharing their ideas directly on top of the text, and those ideas are anchored to specific points in the text. So here, wherever you see a highlight, this phrase or word, whatever it might be, is directly anchored to a specific annotation on the right side of the screen. Um, and what this is allowing is for that threaded discussion that students are really used to in social media and kind of bringing that quality of conversation and the different kinds of technological familiarity that students are used to into a academic discussion-based environment. So if anyone has questions about that, feel free to drop those into Q&A. I did want to note one of our questions was, is this, I think this in this person's question refers to social annotation. Is it intended for online, virtual, hybrid, post-secondary students? maybe only. And to that, I would say no. We do have many professors successfully using social annotation in flipped live classroom environments. But I was saving this question for you, Professor Gopal, because I was hoping that you could also share your experiences with different modalities and social annotation.
Yes. So my online students are continuously working on hypothesis assignments. Um, and I think it can be really useful in the online environment, especially because students often get bored with the regular discussion boards that we have. So we need to spice it up in some way. So there are many things that we can do. One is, we obviously insert videos. We do lots of things so that they're not feeling like, oh, it's the same assignment for 16 weeks. So they sort of get bored easily. So to keep their interest going, when they go to the hypothesis board, which is a little bit different than, it looks like this than a regular LMS discussion board. So when they go to the hypothesis board and they put their notes in and they return, it helps them in several levels. One is obviously to do the assignment, to understand the assignment, to get to know it really well. And they're able to, I have them actually go back and pick quotes from what folks have written and then talk about it, like I explained in one of the slides. So they get to talk about it in a different way. Um, and they're able to incorporate it into their writing. More importantly, even if we were doing a test or something, what happens is they often, when they are reading passively, they really do not do a whole lot of note taking. But when I have them do the note taking here, it's always there. So then I just have to remind them, do you remember that you made your notes? You made your annotations in hypothesis? Because they can make personal notes, they can make annotations. So all you have to do is go back, bring that in. Now start brainstorming. You're going to easily come up with what you truly want to say about this topic. So it helps them generate ideas and write about those ideas. So it's very doable. It works very well. In fact, I started working with my online classes hypothesis first, and then I moved it into my face-to-face and hybrids. And I'm talking about asynchronous classes. I haven't yet taught completely synchronous face-to-face. So that I have not used. And you could still do it in the same way. You could still do
Thank you for that. That's really helpful. I see a question. Is admin at play here? I'm not sure what that means. So if the person who put that into our Q&A can rephrase that, I would appreciate it. There's a question about, and so sorry about my voice. Does this tool allow post first? Not at the moment, though I have received requests about that, so I will forward that on to the product team. But as Professor Gopal was mentioning, there are a number of different ways that students can annotate over the text. So in this environment that is on your screen, everyone in the class can see each other's annotations, but there is also a small group reading setting. So however your LMS uses small groups, we can pull that into the tool and split students' reading views by small group, which allows them to participate in reading assignments via small group. Alternately, if you are looking for more of a one-to-one interaction between yourself as the instructor and the student, they can also we can also enable that. So the student might be doing more self-study or showing you that they can critically move through a text independently. So there's different functions. The default is kind of a big umbrella social annotation with everyone participating. But as Professor Gopal mentioned, there's lots of different ways to use the tool depending on how you want students to be collaborating. Um, Oh, okay. Um, Thank you for that clarification. So, okay, so I will kind of clear out a couple of our questions. And so I wanted to bring in a couple of my own reflections and then um, bring in our Q&A that we had prepped a little bit beforehand. So two things that I really wanted to shout out about your presentation, Professor Gopal, um, was at the beginning of the session, it sounded like you were really having students reconsider their own ethos as readers and students. So we talk a lot as instructors about our own teaching ethos and relationship to students. But it sounds like with this rooting in self-reflection, you are really having them think critically about their own situation to the text as
Mhm.
learners. And I really appreciated that. And also, your presentation seems to distinguish between self-image, which in the context here is more of a performance of attention, like you are performing your attention for your instructor so you can get your points. Um, and meanwhile, your true attention is focused elsewhere, like social media or whatever is pinging you at the moment. Um, but what you're really trying to cultivate, it sounds like, is attention toward one's own interiority and self. Um, and it can be a big ask for students. I don't know that um, a lot of our students have the opportunity to do that in K-12. So it's something that's maybe quite new to them. And I was wondering about A, if I'm getting that right, if I've interpreted this correctly, and then B, what are kind of the foundational skills for like the turning inward through social annotation. Um, Feel free to take that wherever you want to go.
Okay. So, um, yeah, so because I'm have always only taught at the college level, um, I am, and I keep thinking of these young adult learners, I mean, 18 and up learners. So everything is geared toward that. I haven't put much thought into what would the situation be like if, if I was teaching maybe the ninth graders or the seventh graders or something. I think it could still be done because all we are, in fact, this is I'm speculating, but I'm also going by experience because if I remember the way I was trained, my own learning was trained by my teachers, by my parents, etc. Um, uh, a great amount of importance was given to focus, to being there. You're reading something, then you're not really doing something else. You're not really that whole multitasking aspect that we talk about now, or we see folks doing now, and or which we kind of we respect because of that particular situation. We see folks with their phones and then running and then do something else and then doing multiple things, and in certain regard it is, yes, but in one of the ways in which we were trained even as a young child was focus, and focus used to come through reading. When you're reading there, you're really there. Um, my parents would be testing us, having us recite back what we have read. So, what have you read? So, there was close attention to how we were using our minds, how we were using our intellect. There was a great amount of attention, whether we were sitting at the dinner table. I mean, not that there was plenty of lightheartedness and plenty of joking and fooling around and being silly, all of that. But at the same time, we we were not we were trained in such a way that we could not lose track of the most important thing, which is your intellect, which is your mind, and how you use it in different instances to train that in a certain way. So was all of that was super important. And so in that sense, I feel if I had none of the, if I had grown up in an environment where did not have that privileged upbringing, where, though we were middle class family, even if it was slightly upper middle class family growing up in India, there was just so much reverence for learning. There was so much reverence for learning. So even if I did not grow up in that environment, if I grew up, in a different way, in a different environment, where there was no sort of like emphasis on the intelligence aspect, awareness aspect, the self-seeking aspect, etc. I think if even then, if the training could happen soon, the earlier the training happens in any which way it happens, the earlier the training happens, whether it happens through disciplining, not harsh disciplining, but kind, compassionate disciplining. In whichever way it happens, it's always a good thing to, and it's probably even, it will be easier for young ones to get that training, have that training, and develop it further as they go on. So I think in that sense, K through 12, this could be incorporated in many ways, even in that, even in those years. I don't know if I made any sense at all.
Yes, you did. And I have a follow-up to that that I'm going to transition into one of the questions that we had pre-prepared. Um, so through your presentation, it seems that the development of these critical thinking skills, um, at least through social annotation, it can be done in a social environment. And I was curious about that. Like, is being with others and being, communally annotating over a text,
Yes.
uh, what is the importance of that to those developing those critical
Yes.
thinking skills, that social element? Um, is it a necessity or maybe just a nice support to have? Um, and then I was going to tack on one of our pre-prepared questions. Have you noticed a shift in students' confidence in their critical thinking skills as they do this work?
Yes. So for the first question, which is, I see I lost track of your first question as I was thinking of the second one. If you could repeat your first question.
Yeah, so I was wondering just about the social element. So
Yes.
we can develop critical thinking
Yeah.
skills individually, but I was wondering about your perspective about the social
Oh,
component.
definitely. It's a necessity. So that's why I mentioned the three stages of learning, which is Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, which is Sanskrit terminology. Um, the Manana part, the second stage, where we are clearing doubts through discussion, through discourse. I mean, without those exchange of thoughts, what can there be? There really cannot be an intellectual world without an exchange of thought. That's how we can clarify things. We can, because you're seeking, when I'm seeking a particular type of knowledge, then I'm not just listening and then sitting is not going to help me. I need to listen very intently, very carefully. I need to have the discussion. And that discussion format, the only difference is that if it's not happening physically, like in the classroom, which you can make happen, but it's happening for everybody on the virtual board, which is the hypothesis annotation board. So that is absolutely, I feel, that stage of learning, whether you do it through social annotation, or whether you do it with peer-to-peer sitting and discussing, whatever way you do it, it is super important and it is a stage in learning. And I think without that, there are many doubts that cannot, and without that, I feel like if you just transition to the last stage, which is you're just sitting by yourself and I'm not sure if all your thoughts are going to keep coming up, questions are going to keep coming up because our minds are really busy minds. I mean, like it's never quiet, right? Chat, 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 chat. So how are you going to, you will automatically go back to have a discussion with somebody and then come back to your own space. And now you're processing the learning, you're processing the discussion. Now you go and work all of that in the quiet space of the cave. Like Thornburg says, that's where the cave is. So, yeah, unavoidable stage is my opinion. And your other question was, see how forgetful I
Confidence.
am. Horrible, huh?
So your notice about students' confidence as they are
Yes.
taking up social annotation.
Yes. When they're trying something new, they may have a little bit of apprehension, and then, and you keep having them do this. So it frees up their mind a little bit. It frees up that space. They feel like, in fact, when you give them a kind word, say, hey, that was good. That was fantastic. Like in the classroom, and they were all like, and it was all up on the screen, and I would highlight a few things. Hey, look at this, look at this, look at this. So they feel good. And when somebody is words are being highlighted, someone else, wants to get to that place where their words will be highlighted too. And they're all getting attention. They're all getting attention from each other. So, but the attention is all on, the focus is not diverted in a million different places, not dispersed, but it is consolidated into one space. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And that's a good return to this topic of attention that we began with at the beginning of the session. Um, I'm going to try to pose two more questions before, and then Professor Gopal, if there's anything that you want to answer in Q&A, just let me know. Um, so the first one that I wanted to pose to you as we wrap up is advice you would give to educators who are new to using social annotation. So do you have any hacks or, you know, first things to try, that kind of thing?
I would say I just kind of, I love to try. I'm very strange in that way. I love to try new tools, and I just somehow was very much intrigued and got into it. But depending upon your nature and your inclinations, if you feel like, I must do this carefully, then I would say, first, watch a few videos of how it's to be done or how it works best. Then if it's already incorporated, that is in your LMS, and then maybe you can talk to another educator who has been using this. You can ask for tips from them, sit with them, and then just kind of get your feet wet, like do one assignment and then have some reflection on what that felt like. And then, it'll start. So it's sort of like it starts growing like a little seedling that starts growing. Yeah. Take it slow.
Um, Thank you for that. I know that some people find it helpful to start with just a syllabus assignment too, to see if they like the tool. And that can be a nice space to kind of have students try out the tool in a low stakes way. Sometimes there's a fear of just using a different technology. So that can be a nice way to kind of help students enter the tool in kind of a low stakes way, as I mentioned before. Um, so let me see. And I'm going to end with a more strategic question. So, are there specific strategies to ensure all students participate, especially those who might be reluctant to contribute? So, you probably have some sort of threshold that students are required to meet, but beyond that, um, how do you kind of have them be attending to this text over the course of time beyond the minimum thresholds that you're asking them to meet for participation grade
Yeah.
or whatever it might be.
Yeah, really. Yeah. Wonderful questions, really amazing questions. I would say to make the student feel responsible. The responsibility is on your shoulders now to get this done. You're going to just do this very simple activity. You're going to be focused and you're going to talk about it. If you feel very shy to talk about it, what you have written is fine. You're not going to be forced to do, to talk live in the classroom. But if you can, then that's fantastic. So I think when we give them a sense of responsibility, there's something within us where we feel like I'm responsible for this, I'm responsible to get this student through. So we feel that out, and the student feels, oh my goodness, yeah, this is my responsibility. I am part of this class, and it's my part in the group to actually simply find a really good paper on this particular topic. So when we give them that responsibility, I think there's a little bit, there's a sense of importance that comes. It's like, oh, I must do this. There's a sense of duty that comes. There's something within us that makes it. So rather than, that, oh, okay, the grade won't be entered or something like that, or whether it's going to be a 0 rather than a 10. So I think that sense of responsibility plays a really good role in encouraging them, I think.
Thank you. And it seems like as students are kind of returning to and thinking about their ethos as learners, that
Mhm.
supports what you were describing with the accountability and responsibility for their own participation in class.
Yeah.
Um, well, thank you so much. I am going to share some final housekeeping bits
Okay.
here as I move through our slides. So let's see. And just a quick note, we have our annual conference, Annotate Ed, coming up in April. So anyone attending here might be interested in that um, to learn more strategies for incorporating social annotation in your classes, hearing interesting ways people are using the tool with different LMS functionalities and so on. So do check that out. We also have an upcoming free no cost hypothesis academy if you're a faculty at a partner institution, if you're wanting to check out the tool and kind of use it to discuss different higher ed related topics. Our next academy will be about student voice and student success. Um, and if you are interested, do check out our pricing options if you are new and not currently a customer. And there, we have an email here, B Cotter at Hypothesis. That's Bernie on our sales team. So feel free to check out the information that Bernie can help out with, and feel free to scan the QR code for more information there. But I'm going to wrap up here, and thank you so much for attending. And if I didn't get to your question, feel free to send me an email I'm going to put my email into chat, jessica.george at hypothesis. Um, and I'm happy to brainstorm pedagogical strategies. But I want to give a final shout out to Professor Gopal. Thank you so much. You sound like a really wonderful, and I know you are, educator. So again, thank you so much for being here, and thank you to all of our attendees for your interest today. So I will go ahead and wrap things up here. Um, and I'll hang on the session for a little bit longer, but thank you all. Have a great
Thank
day.
you. Thank you so much.